Welcome to yet another tidbit from the book of Daniel. I'm Dr. Paul Peterson, and this is the second part of chapter 2. In the first tidbit, we looked at the literary and theological aspects of this amazing chapter. Now we are moving into more historical and prophetic issues. We saw how the chapter is structured like a chiasm, but we also saw that it is connected, at least to the previous chapter, and as we look forward in the book, we'll realize that it is closely connected with the following chapters as well. The language in chapter 2 shifts from Hebrew to Aramaic. This is the language in which the book of Daniel was written till the end of chapter 7. And if you look at chapters 2 to 7, written in Aramaic, they both give dream visions about the world empires. Chapter 3 and 6 speak about death decrees, executions even of the saints, the three friends of Daniel, in the fire furnace, and Daniel himself thrown into the lion's den, on the issue of prayer and worship. And then you have in the middle chapters 4 and 5, which speak about the judgment of the kings of Babylon and the kingdom of Babylon through first Nebuchadnezzar, then Belshazzar. So these Aramaic chapters are closely structured also as a chiasm, that is, a reversed parallel. Now, a little about these languages, and this is the historical part. The difference. First of all, they're both Semitic languages. They are closely related. Nevertheless, if you grew up with Aramaic, you could not automatically read or understand Hebrew or vice versa. The Aramaic language was at the time the lingua franca, that is, the commonly spoken and used language for administration and trade. It had slowly taken over from Akkadian, the language which was Nebuchadnezzar's, most likely Nebuchadnezzar's original language, and at the time of Daniel, during the Neo-Babylonian Empire, the Aramaic language took over as court language that continued throughout the subsequent Persian Empire. Hebrew, however, was only spoken by a relatively few people. Now, when you then have a book that is written in two languages, which is certainly not normal, then you have to realize what a large impact that would have on its first readers. Now, when you read the book of Daniel, you read it most likely in translation, so you don't realize how important this meta-message of the book is. Now we change the language. Aramaic, the international language. Hebrew, the language spoken exclusively by the people of God. And we will return to that shift in language when we come to tidbits from Daniel 8, where the Hebrew language once again takes over. What is interesting is that in chapter 2, the shift from the Hebrew to the Aramaic language doesn't take place in the beginning, but in the midst of verse 4. This is where the wise men reply to King Nebuchadnezzar. It is then noted in Aramaic. That might have been a scribe's gloss. The same shift in language, by the way, is found in the one document we have from Qumran, the Dead Sea Scrolls, on Daniel 2 with this change. It is already there. It is early. What is remarkable, however, is this is not because the wise men speak a different language from the king. Nebuchadnezzar would have addressed the wise men in the same language as the one in which they replied to him. So you have the peculiarity of 3.5 verses, 4.5 actually, that are written in Hebrew. But that peculiarity links us to the preceding chapter. The words used for dreams, dream visions, link us to the preceding chapter and makes us aware that this is a continuation of the story about the Daniel who had received the special gift from God of interpreting such languages. A few more historical notes. In chapter 1, there is a sentence which has created some disturbances at times, because it says, in the second year of King Nebuchadnezzar. Now you would say, but did not Daniel stay at the University of Babylon for 3 years? Now he's already here in the second year. The solution to that is more simple than you could imagine. That is, the first year of King Nebuchadnezzar, the first would be not his year of accession, but the following year, while the first year of Daniel's training would be the same year as the accession of the king. So this is actually not so difficult. It's because they used what we would call inclusive reckoning, representative reckoning of the years. So the 3 years of Daniel the first one would be the year in which Nebuchadnezzar became a king. The second year of his training would be the year in which Nebuchadnezzar had his first royal regnal year, and the third year of Daniel would be equivalent to the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. This is just after Nebuchadnezzar or Daniel's examination, so that is the issue here. A word about Mesopotamian divination. We often think that the Mesopotamian astronomers were actually astronomers in our sense of the word, or at least astrologers. That is a misunderstanding. They were observing, but at the time of Daniel, they did not know the zodiac. They did not have the zodiac signs. Their divination was based on sun, moon, and stars, yes, but just as much on meteorology, on observations of the weather. The sun was not the major god, by the way, in Mesopotamia, as you would sometimes find. It was not astrology in the modern sense. That has come with Greek astrology and the further development later on. And then to the part that you may have wanted me to speak about from the beginning, that is the prophecy, the prophetic part. First, the imagery of a statue and the number 4 used for the world empires would have been naturally understood in the Mesopotamian context. Statues, of course, idols of the divine, were common and commonly used. The number 4 was a number used in Mesopotamian divination for kingdoms, called 4, or the name 4 for the four directions of the compass. That we will see later in Daniel. North and south, east and west are important. You have 4, and therefore you have a 4-empire scheme. The identification of the world empires in Daniel 2 are linked to what we read in the subsequent visions and dreams in Daniel 7 and 8. There we have the names of Medo-Persia and Greece. Here we only have the name Babylon. So in chapter 2, though there is this amazing prophecy, the main emphasis is actually not on the fulfillment per se. No one has put in the names to say, and see, these are the kingdoms. It's not on details like the 10 toes. By the way, the 10 toes are not mentioned. They play no role, and we should not impose upon the text what is not important in the text itself. These world empires, how should we label them? How should we name them? The New International Version Study Bible have the clear, old-fashioned, traditional, early church designation of Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece, which are all found in the book of Daniel as such, and then Rome. And what then follows Rome? After Rome, there is a period of clay mixed with iron. So Rome continues in the iron, now mixed with clay. You might say, why do we call these world empires? After all, there are many other empires throughout history who have expanded their territory just as much. Nothing about the Mongols or mighty kingdoms of China. Now the perspective here is empires that are related to the presence of the people of God. Not the Inca Empire or the Mayan Empire, for instance, or the Aztec Empire. Now, what does it mean that iron is mixed with clay? The text itself gives actually an explanation. It means that the period following the Roman Empire is a period where strength is mixed with weakness. It is also a period where they cannot stick together, they cannot be glued together. There are many interpretations, but the image is from marriage. This is a marriage that cannot last, will not last. Why? Because there is a power struggle. Looking at the present world, or even the world after Rome, it has not been possible for anyone to conquer all of the area where the people of God is located. It is not possible, has not been possible to make it stick together. Nationalism, racism, discrimination, inequality are still terms today that hinder such unification of humankind. Just a word on the continuation, on the categorization of Rome. What is it that makes the continuation a continuation of Rome? Is it geography? Now, if you look at it that way, modern Western Europe does not really fit with the Roman Empire. Large parts of the Roman Empire were located in northern Africa. They do not belong to, for instance, the European market. And major parts of those countries that now constitute, for instance, the Western Europe, were not part of the Roman Empire at all. Northern Germany, Scandinavia, Poland, and so on. So the categories that we have to apply should not be geographical, rather cultural and ideological. And that means that Rome's ideology, philosophy, continues far wider and larger than just in Western Europe. It is like a bad marriage. The world cannot stick together. And when the stone hits, it doesn't hit only Western Europe, it actually hits all of the world. The statue is a symbol of human dominion as such, and when we come to the end of the world, we are told they can still not find any kind of unity. So the future kingdom will be based on the stone that is cut off from the mountain, and then itself will become a mountain. Who is that stone? And Jesus interprets this in Matthew 21, in verses 42 to 44, as himself. He was cut off, and when he returns to earth, he will establish a kingdom that will never end. Thank you for listening to yet another tidbit from the book of Daniel. Chapter 2 has ended. There may be remaining questions, and we have to look at the response by Nebuchadnezzar, because as we move into chapter 3, we will discover that he actually didn't like it too much. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to another tidbit from the book of Daniel when we move to Daniel 3.